In a crowded church, a bride stood frozen as the surrounding gazes shifted from anticipation to pure shock. In a moment of absolute silence, a man walked down the aisle and made a decision capable of rewriting the fate of that ceremony. What began as an unlikely gesture turned into a story of courage, shock, and emotions no one could have predicted. And when the truth came to light, everything that once seemed like a farce took on a new meaning. Before diving into this surprising story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories. Church on Fifth Avenue, adorned with white lilies and orchids, waited anxiously for the big moment. The polished wooden pews were filled with guests, all dressed to the nines, with polite smiles and curious eyes. At the altar, the bride, Sophia Campbell, looked like a vision. Her French lace gown, meticulously embroidered, cascaded to the floor, and the diaphanous veil framed a face that radiated a mixture of nervousness and pure bliss. She held a bouquet of white roses and jasmine, her hands trembling slightly, but her smile was unshakable. The minutes dragged on, turning anticipation into a palpable anxiety. The priest, a grey-haired man with a gentle voice, cast discreet glances at his wristwatch, while the ambient music, once soft and welcoming, began to sound somewhat repetitive. Sophia tried to stay calm, telling herself that delays were common, that New York City traffic was unpredictable, that Leo, her fiancé, was just a little absent-minded. But with every passing minute, that certainty evaporated, replaced by an icy pang in her stomach. The whispers started discreetly like light breezes, but soon swelled into a gale of malicious comments. Did he back out? How embarrassing. I always knew this. Wedding wouldn't work out, echoed through the pews, mingling with muffled giggles and the flash of cell phones. Yes, some guests, without a shred of shame, were documenting the scandal on their screens as if they were watching a show. Sophia felt a blush creep up her face, her legs weakening under the weight of the dress, and the bouquet, once firm in her hands, now trembled uncontrollably. Her heart, once full of hope, plummeted into an abyss of humiliation. It was then that the cell phone in her small clutch vibrated. With trembling hands she picked it up, the screen illuminating the short, cruel message that would seal her fate that day. Sorry, I can't do this. No explanation, no courage, just the cold, impersonal abandonment of a text. The church erupted in a deafening buzz. Some feigned pity, others savored the scandal like first-rate entertainment. Sophia felt the world spin, her vision blurred, and the tears, previously held back, streamed freely down her face. It was the kind of shame that would leave a permanent mark, an indelible scar on her soul. And it was precisely at the peak of this embarrassment, when the floor seemed to vanish from beneath her feet, that something completely unexpected happened. At the back of the church, almost hidden behind a marble column, was a man who should never have been there. Richard Sterling, her boss. The millionaire known for his impassive demeanor, strategic coldness, and zero involvement in his employees' personal lives. He who never showed emotion, who lived in a world of numbers and deals, was there, watching the drama unfold. Seeing her fall apart, Richard, to everyone's astonishment, stood up. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, displayed an unusual intensity. He walked down the center aisle, ignoring the curious stares and astonished expressions of the guests. Every step was firm, determined, as if he were on a mission. He climbed the altar steps, stopped beside Sophia, who was still crying silently, and murmured, so low that only she could hear, "Just pretend I'm the groom." Sophia barely had time to react, to process the words, to understand the magnitude of that act. In seconds, Richard took command of the situation. He turned to the priest, who was watching him with his mouth agape, and with impressive calm claimed a last-minute change. The ceremony, which had seemed doomed to failure, continued. Improvised, surreal, unbelievable. The guests were stunned to see the rich, sophisticated, and seemingly distant man take on the role of the groom as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The kiss at the end, brief and formal, was enough to ignite rumors that swept through the city like an uncontrollable wildfire. At the reception, which became a stage for speculation and curious glances, Richard guided Sophia, now his wife by signature, with an almost protective firmness. He helped her hold her head high, face the judgmental stares, and endure the gossip that spread like wildfire. Behind every elegant gesture, every word spoken with surgical precision, there was something more, a silent anger against those who had laughed at her, and an unexpected determination to help her regain her dignity. Sophia felt like she was in a dream, or perhaps a nightmare, where reality blended with the absurd. The following days were chaos. Tabloid headlines, speculation on gossip shows, conspiracy theories about the whirlwind marriage of the millionaire and his employee. At work, everyone watched her as if she were the main character in a soap opera, and in fact she was. Richard, in his imposing office, laid down the rules: professional distance, absolute silence about what happened, and a plan to annul the marriage as soon as the dust settled. But what began as an act of protection, an emergency exit from a humiliating situation, turned into a forced cohabitation. And forced cohabitation, as fate likes to play tricks, revealed sides that neither of them knew. At social events, where they had to present themselves as a couple to keep up appearances and avoid more scandals, Richard revealed a charm, an elegance, and an almost hidden kindness. Sophia realized that behind the cold, impenetrable facade, there was a man who observed everything with surprising depth, who felt much more than he showed, and who somehow seemed to have chosen her at that altar for reasons that went far beyond compassion. A dance at one of those events that lasted longer than expected, an accidental touch of hands, a gaze that lingered a little too long. The emotional tension between them grew, subtle but undeniable. Her ex-fiancé Leo reappeared too late, with the lame excuse that he had panicked, but hearing his voice now only confirmed something for Sophia. The woman he abandoned at the altar no longer existed. Now there was someone stronger, more self-aware, and surprisingly connected to the man who had saved her from public humiliation, the one who, with a simple whisper, had changed the course of her life. Until one night, after a personal crisis left her vulnerable and helpless, Richard showed up at her small apartment. Not with flowers or jewelry, but with home-cooked food, words of comfort, and a silent help that was worth more than any gift. And in his eyes, Sophia saw a silent confession, a feeling he was struggling to hide. The kiss that followed was anything but fake. It was intense, pent-up, inevitable. An explosion of contained emotions, a mutual recognition of something that had been there, latent since the day of the impromptu wedding. Over time, they both realized they were trapped, not just by legal documents, but by feelings that defied common sense, logic, and all the rules Richard had imposed. When the divorce papers arrived, the silence between them revealed the raw truth. Neither of them wanted to sign. Richard, the ruthless businessman, the cold and calculating millionaire, finally admitted it. His life, before her, was organized, yes, but lonely, elegant, yet empty. He didn't want to go back to that sterile world, and right there, kneeling in her small apartment, with the dim light of the living room illuminating his face, he asked her to stay with him, not for convenience, not for appearances, but for love. Sophia accepted, with a mix of tears and laughter, a whirlwind of emotions that finally found their safe harbor. They tore up the divorce papers together, deciding to build a new life, making it clear to the world that the marriage was now real. Even the ex-fiancé reappeared to apologize, but it was too late. Her heart was safe in new hands, in the hands of the man who had saved her. In the end, Sophia realized, being left at the altar wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The wrong man ran away. The right man stepped up, touched her shoulder, and whispered, "Just pretend I'm the groom." And by pretending, they found the truest love of all. The morning after Richard's proposal dawned with a different glow for Sophia. The sun streaming through the window of her small apartment seemed more vibrant, the bird's song more melodic. The torn divorce petition lay crumpled in the trash, a symbol of the decision they had made. It wasn't just a new beginning. It was a complete redefinition of everything she thought about love, destiny, and most importantly, herself. Still in shock from the intensity of the previous night, Sophia found herself replaying every word, every touch, every look from Richard. His confession, so raw and vulnerable, shattered the image of the unshakable businessman she knew. He, the man who seemed to have everything, had revealed a deep loneliness, a void that only she somehow had managed to fill, and she, the woman humiliated at the altar, discovered in herself a strength and a capacity to love that she had never imagined possessing. The phone rang, pulling her from her daydreams. It was Richard. His voice, usually controlled, had a hint of light-heartedness. "Good morning, Mrs. Sterling," he said, and the formality of his tone contrasted with the intimacy of the night before, making her smile. "We need to talk about how we're going to clarify to the world this new phase of ours, and of course about breakfast. I'm on my way." The conversation that followed as they shared toast and coffee in Sophia's small kitchen was surprisingly practical. Richard, the strategist, already had a plan. "We can't just show up holding hands and say, 'Now it's for real,'" he explained, his eyes fixed on hers. "People need a narrative, something that justifies the change, that gives our story credibility." Sophia listened, fascinated. His mind worked on a different level, turning emotional complexity into a project to be managed. "And what would that narrative be?" she asked, curious. "We'll start with the truth, Sophia. The truth about the abandonment, the humiliation, but we'll add our version of the facts to it. That what began as an act of compassion, of protection, evolved. That being forced to live together made us see each other in a way we never would have under normal circumstances. That love, as cliché as it sounds, blossomed where we least expected it." He paused, watching her reaction. "It'll be a challenge, I know. There will be skepticism, gossip. But if we're firm, if we show that we're together and that it's real, they'll have to accept it." The first step of Richard's plan was a discreet dinner with a few close friends and family of Sophia's and a select group of Richard's business partners. The atmosphere was tense. The curious glances and veiled questions were inevitable. Sophia, however, felt a new confidence. Beside Richard, she was no longer the abandoned bride, but a woman who had found her place. Richard, for his part, was impeccable. With a charming smile and a posture that exuded confidence, he masterfully conducted the evening. He told the story of the impromptu wedding, but with a different nuance, a tone that suggested fate, a predestination. He spoke of the admiration he felt for Sophia, for her strength, for her resilience, and to the surprise of everyone, especially Sophia, he took her hand and kissed it with a tenderness that made her heart race. "What began as a chivalrous gesture," he declared to the table, his eyes fixed on Sophia's, "transformed into something much more profound. I found in Sophia not just a partner, but the woman who made me see life in a way I had forgotten. And for that reason we've decided not only to stay married, but to build a life together, based on a love that took us by surprise." The reactions were varied. Some genuine smiles, other looks of suspicion, but most seemed convinced by Richard's sincerity or his performance. Sophia felt a warmth in her chest. It was the first time he had verbalized his feelings in public, and the sensation was intoxicating. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. The news of the real marriage spread quickly, generating a new wave of headlines and comments. This time, however, the tone was different. From a scandal, the story transformed into a modern fairy tale. The millionaire who fell in love with his employee under unusual circumstances. At work, the atmosphere also changed. The curious stares gave way to a cautious respect. Sophia, once seen as the victim, was now the boss's wife, the protagonist of an unlikely love story. She felt the weight of expectation, but also a new freedom. The humiliation had been replaced by a sense of purpose. Richard, for his part, seemed lighter, more approachable. His strategic coldness gave way to moments of ease, to genuine smiles that were once rare. He included her in decisions, asked for her opinion, and treated her not just as his wife, but as an equal, a partner in every sense. One afternoon, while they were working on a project together, he surprised her with a question. "Sophia, do you regret accepting my proposal that day?" She looked at him, her heart pounding. "No, Richard, not for a second. And you?" He smiled, a smile that lit up his eyes. "My only regret is not realizing sooner what was right in front of me." That night in her apartment, as Richard prepared a simple dinner, Sophia watched him. This man, who was once a stranger, a distant boss, was now her husband, her confidant, her love. Her life, which had seemed to fall apart at the altar, had been rebuilt in a way she could never have imagined. And for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But, as in any good story, the calm never lasts long. The reappearance of Leo, the ex-fiancé, was about to add a new layer of complexity to this already intricate plot. He had called Sophia, asking for a meeting, claiming he needed to explain everything. And Sophia knew that no matter how much she tried to move on, the past still had some scores to settle. Leo's call hung over Sophia like a dark cloud, even amidst the euphoria of her new life with Richard. His voice, once so familiar and full of promises, now sounded distant, almost strange. He was asking for a meeting, begging for a chance to explain the inexplicable. Sophia felt a chill. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't erase the image of the cold, cruel text message she had received at the altar. She told Richard about the call, watching his expression harden. "You don't have to see him, Sophia," he said, his voice low but firm. "What he has to say doesn't matter anymore. The past is the past." "I know, Richard," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. "But I need closure. I need to hear it from him, not from a text message. I need him to understand that there's no going back." Richard sighed but nodded. He understood her need, even if he didn't share it. "All right. But I'm going with you. Not as your husband, but as your security." A faint smile played on his lips, and Sophia felt a comforting warmth. He would always be there for her. The meeting was set at a discreet coffee shop far from prying eyes. Sophia arrived first, her heart pounding erratically. Richard waited outside in his car, a silent but powerful presence. When Leo walked in, Sophia almost didn't recognize him. He looked haggard, with sunken eyes and a slumped posture. He was not the confident, charming man she had fallen in love with. "Sophia," he began, his voice cracking, "I'm so sorry. I know there are no excuses for what I did. I was a coward." She watched him, impassive. His words, which once would have had the power to destroy her, now seemed empty, without echo. "Why, Leo?" she asked, her voice cold. "Why did you do it? Why did you humiliate me like that?" He hung his head, his hands trembling. "I panicked, Sophia. I just panicked. The pressure of the wedding, the responsibility. I don't know. I felt suffocated. I thought I wasn't good enough for you, that I couldn't make you happy." Sophia laughed, a bitter laugh. "Not good enough? You left me at the altar, Leo. You left me alone, exposed, humiliated in front of everyone. That's not being good enough. That's being cruel." Tears streamed down his face. I know I was a monster. I regret it every single day. I love you, Sophia. I've always loved you. Please give me another chance. I can change. I can be the man you deserve." His words, once so desired, now sounded like a distant echo. She looked at him, at the man who was once her world, and felt nothing but a deep sadness. The woman he had abandoned no longer existed. In her place was a stronger, more self-aware, more confident Sophia. "No, Leo," she said, her voice firm. "There are no more chances. That day in the church, you didn't just abandon me. You set me free. You gave me the chance to find someone who truly values me, who protects me, who loves me for real." He looked up, his eyes wide. "Someone? Are you talking about that man? Your boss? This is a sham, Sophia. You can't be in love with him. He only did it to save you from embarrassment, out of pity." Sophia stood up, her patience gone. "It's not pity, Leo. It's love. And it's real. Something you were never capable of giving me." She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. "Sophia, please. Don't do this. I know you still love me. We had a history, a future." "We had a future that you destroyed," she replied, pulling her arm away. "And my story is now being written with someone else. Goodbye, Leo." She walked out of the coffee shop, her heart still pounding but with a sense of relief. The closure she had been seeking had finally come. As she got into Richard's car, she felt a tight embrace, a comfort only he could offer. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft. Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of liberation. "Yes, Richard, I'm okay, better than ever." He kissed her, a long, deep kiss that sealed the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. From that day on, Leo's past would have no more power over her. The story of Sophia and Richard, the story of an unlikely love born from humiliation and compassion, was just beginning. Life with Richard was a constant discovery. He, the ruthless businessman, revealed himself to be a thoughtful partner, with a subtle sense of humor and a passion for details that surprised her every day. Sophia, in turn, blossomed under his care and admiration. She felt more beautiful, more intelligent, more capable. They began to build their home, not just a physical structure, but a home, a refuge where they could be themselves, away from the prying eyes and expectations of the world. The late-night talks, the dinners cooked together, the shared laughter, it all contributed to solidifying the foundation of their relationship. At work, the dynamic also evolved. Sophia, once his employee, was now his partner on many projects, his confidant. Richard valued her intelligence, her intuition, her vision. He encouraged her to grow, to challenge herself, to go beyond her own limits. But it wasn't all a bed of roses. High society, always eager for a scandal, still watched them with a magnifying glass. There were those who doubted the authenticity of their love, who waited for the moment the farce would be exposed. And there was also Richard's family, a traditional and conservative family who still viewed Sophia with a certain suspicion. Richard's mother, Eleanor, an elegant and imposing woman, never hid her preference for a more suitable marriage for her son. She saw Sophia as an intruder, an opportunist who had taken advantage of the situation. Family dinners were always a minefield, with loaded questions and veiled comments. Sophia, however, was determined to earn her place. She was no longer the naive girl who let herself be crushed by humiliation. She was Richard Sterling's wife, and she would fight for her love and her place in that family. On one such occasion, Eleanor, with a forced smile, asked Sophia about her plans for the future, implying that she should devote herself to the home and family, not to work. Sophia, with her head held high, replied, "My plans, Eleanor, include continuing to grow professionally, alongside Richard, and building a happy and prosperous family. I believe one does not exclude the other." Richard, who had been watching the scene in silence, smiled. He knew he had chosen the right woman. The woman who not only loved him, but was also strong, intelligent, and capable of facing any challenge. The woman who, with a simple, "Just pretend I'm the groom," had transformed his life in a way he could never have imagined. But the battle for the acceptance of Richard's family was just beginning, and Sophia knew she would need all her strength and resilience to prove that her love for Richard was as real as his was for her. Eleanor's resistance was a constant challenge, a persistent shadow over Sophia and Richard's newfound happiness. Dinners at the Sterling mansion were always a performance, with Sophia trying to navigate the treacherous waters of social expectations and her mother-in-law's subtle digs. Richard, always by her side, was her safe harbor, her shield against the veiled attacks. One evening, during a Sterling family charity event, Eleanor orchestrated a casual encounter between Richard and a young socialite, an heiress to a fortune with an impeccable resume, according to her. The young woman named Patricia was stunning, with an easy smile and fluid conversation. She didn't miss an opportunity to flirt with Richard, ignoring Sophia's presence. Sophia felt her discomfort grow. It wasn't jealousy, or at least not just jealousy. It was the feeling of being diminished, of having her place questioned. Richard, sensing the situation, acted with his characteristic elegance. He excused himself from Patricia, claiming an urgent matter with Sophia, and led her away from the scene with a reassuring smile. "Don't listen to her," he whispered in Sophia's ear as he guided her to a more private corner of the ballroom. "My mother has a very particular view of what's suitable, But what matters is what we both know and feel. Despite Richard's words, the situation left Sophia deep in thought. She knew the fight for acceptance wouldn't be easy. Eleanor was a force of nature, accustomed to having everything under her control. And Sophia, as much as she loved Richard, didn't want to be the cause of a family conflict. In the following days, Sophia decided she needed to act. She couldn't just react to Eleanor's provocations. She needed to show her worth not just as Richard's wife but as an individual. She threw herself into her work at the company, dedicating herself to an ambitious project Richard had initiated. Her intelligence and dedication did not go unnoticed. She brought a fresh perspective, innovative ideas that complemented Richard's strategic vision. The project, which aimed to expand the company into a new market, was complex and required extensive research and analysis. Sophia dove in head first, working long hours, often alongside Richard. The professional partnership between them grew stronger every day, and Richard was lavish with his praise for her performance. "You have a natural talent for this, Sophia," he said one afternoon as they reviewed reports. "Your ability to see the big picture and at the same time pay attention to the details is impressive." Richard's compliments were a balm to Sophia's soul, but she knew she needed more than that to win over Eleanor. The opportunity arose during a company board meeting where the expansion project would be presented. Eleanor, as a majority shareholder, would be present. Sophia prepared meticulously. She knew this was her chance to show everyone, especially Eleanor, that she wasn't just a pretty face, but an intelligent and capable woman. The presentation was flawless. Sophia, with her clear and confident voice, detailed every stage of the project, the risks, the opportunities, the financial projections. She answered every question with confidence and knowledge, impressing even the most skeptical board members. Richard watched her with evident pride in his eyes. At the end of the presentation, there was a momentary silence, followed by applause. Eleanor, sitting at the front, maintained a neutral expression, but Sophia noticed a different glint in her eyes. After the meeting, Eleanor approached Sophia. "Your presentation was very good, Sophia," she admitted, her voice a little softer than usual. "You really understand the business," Sophia smiled, feeling a small victory. "Thank you, Eleanor. I put a lot of work into it." "I can see that," she replied, and for the first time, Sophia felt there was a crack in her mother-in-law's armor. Despite the small breakthrough, full acceptance was still a long way off. Eleanor was a woman of ingrained habits and prejudices, but Sophia had planted a seed. She had shown that she was more than the abandoned bride or the opportunist. She was a woman with her own merits, capable of contributing significantly to the Sterling Empire. Sophia and Richard's relationship continued to deepen. They shared not only their personal lives, but also their professional ones, becoming an unbeatable team. Every day, Sophia felt more connected to Richard, more secure in his love. However, life, like a good soap opera, always has surprises in store. A new character was about to enter the scene, someone from Richard's past, who would bring to light secrets and challenges that would test the solidity of their relationship in a way they could never have imagined. An old flame, an unresolved love would resurface to shake the foundations of Sophia and Richard's newly built happiness. And Sophia, who thought she had overcome all obstacles, would find herself facing a new and unexpected threat. The seed Sophia planted at the board meeting, though small, began to sprout. Eleanor, despite her still reserved demeanor, started observing Sophia with a less critical, more analytical eye. Professional admiration, however reluctant, was a first step. But personal acceptance, the recognition of Sophia as part of the family, was still unexplored territory. Sophia and Richard's life continued its rhythm, a harmonious dance between work and love. They became inseparable, both at the company and at home. Every day, Sophia discovered new facets of Richard, his passion for old books, his sarcastic humor that only he understood, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his projects. And Richard, in turn, was enchanted by Sophia's resilience, her sharp intelligence, and the way she brightened every room with her presence. The company's expansion project, with Sophia's crucial contribution, was advancing by leaps and bounds. They spent hours in the office, discussing strategies, analyzing data, dreaming about the future. The synergy between them was undeniable, and the project's success was living proof that their partnership went far beyond the personal. It was amidst this routine of intense work and growing love that the new character made her grand entrance. The invitation to a gala dinner celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Sterling Corporation arrived with a special attachment, the list of guests of honor. And on it one name jumped out at Sophia, Isabella Montgomery. Richard, seeing Sophia's expression, felt a chill. Isabella. The name echoed in his mind like a ghost from the past. He had tried to forget her, to bury the memories of an intense and tumultuous love that had ended abruptly, leaving deep scars. Isabella Montgomery? Sophia asked, her voice a little louder than usual. Who is she, Richard? Richard hesitated. She's an old friend, someone I was in a relationship with in the past, many years ago. Richard's answer, though honest, did not calm Sophia. The way he avoided her gaze, the slight clenching of his jaw, all indicated that Isabella was not just an old friend. The gala was a grand event, worthy of the Sterling Corporation's reputation. The ballroom was filled with important figures, business leaders, politicians, socialites. Sophia, stunning in a midnight blue dress, walked beside Richard, feeling the curious stares and whispered gossip. She was used to being the center of attention, but that night there was a different tension in the air. And then she saw her, Isabella Montgomery. She was everything Sophia had imagined, and more. Elegant, sophisticated, with a classic beauty that seemed to defy time. Her eyes, an intense green, swept the room until they found Richard, and an enigmatic smile appeared on her lips. Isabella approached them with impressive ease, as if no time had passed. "Richard, my dear, it's been too long." Her voice was melodious with a subtle foreign accent. She hugged him with an intimacy that made Sophia's chest tighten. "Isabella," Richard replied, his voice a bit tense, "it's good to see you." He introduced her to Sophia, who tried to maintain her composure. "Sophia, this is Isabella Montgomery. Isabella, this is my wife, Sophia." Isabella extended her hand to Sophia, her green eyes analyzing her from head to toe. "So you're the famous Sophia. Richard has told me so much about you." Her tone was friendly, but there was a hint of irony that did not go unnoticed by Sophia. The night dragged on. Isabella stuck to Richard's side, reminiscing about past stories inside, jokes, moments that Sophia didn't share. She felt like an intruder in her own life, a spectator to a past that excluded her. Richard, for his part, seemed torn. He tried to include Sophia in the conversation, but Isabella always found a way to monopolize him. Sophia watched the interaction between them, the way Isabella touched Richard's arm, the way he laughed at her jokes. An insecurity she thought she had overcome began to resurface. She wondered if Richard still had feelings for Isabella, if that past love could be rekindled. On the way home, the silence in the car was heavy. Sophia finally broke it. "She's very beautiful," Richard sighed. "Yes, she is." "And you two had an intense history, didn't you?" He looked at her, his eyes tired. "It was a complicated relationship, Sophia, full of ups and downs. We ended things in a way that wasn't good for either of us." "And why is she here now?" Sophia asked, her voice choked with emotion. "She's an important investor, Sophia, and her family has old ties to mine. My mother invited her." The mention of Eleanor made Sophia understand. This wasn't just a casual reunion, it was a move, an attempt by Eleanor to destabilize her marriage, to bring up a past she hoped Richard hadn't yet moved on from. Sophia's insecurity transformed into a quiet determination. She would not let Isabella or Eleanor destroy what she and Richard had built. She had fought too hard to get here, to find true love, and she would fight to keep it. But Isabella's presence was a real threat. She represented a past Richard had tried to forget, a love that perhaps had never been completely overcome. And Sophia knew that the battle for Richard's heart was just beginning. The arrival of Isabella Montgomery was the first sign that Sophia and Richard's life was about to be turned upside down. revealing secrets and emotions they never imagined existed. Isabella Montgomery's presence in Richard and Sophia's life was like a dissonant melody in a perfect symphony. She wasn't just a memory from the past, she was an active force, an elegant shadow that refused to fade. Sophia felt the weight of comparison, the subtle pressure of having to prove her worth with every interaction, not just to Eleanor, but now to Isabella herself. The days following the gala were marked by a veiled tension. Isabella conveniently extended her stay in the city, citing business that always seemed to coincide with the Sterling family's social events. She was a constant figure, always present, always elegant, always with an enigmatic smile on her lips. Sophia observed the dynamic between Richard and Isabella with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Richard, while demonstrating loyalty to Sophia, seemed uncomfortable in Isabella's presence. There was a history there, a complexity of unresolved feelings that Sophia couldn't decipher. He was attentive to Isabella, but in an almost formal way, as if fulfilling a duty. One afternoon, Sophia found Richard in his office looking thoughtful. He was staring at an old framed photograph she had never seen before. In the photo, a younger Richard with a carefree smile was embracing Isabella, who radiated happiness. "Who is she, really, Richard?" Sophia asked, her voice soft but firm. "Besides an old friend and an investor." Richard sighed, putting the photo back in the drawer. "Isabella and I were in a very serious relationship, Sophia. We were even engaged." The revelation hit Sophia like a lightning bolt. Engaged. That word echoed in her mind, bringing up a new layer of insecurity. She had been the abandoned bride, and now she was married to a man who had once promised his future to another. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she asked, her voice choked. I wanted to leave the past behind, Sophia. I didn't want it to affect what we were building. The breakup was very painful for both of us. She left me suddenly without explanation. It was a very hard blow." Richard's confession brought a new perspective. Isabella wasn't just an ex-girlfriend. She was the woman who had abandoned him just as Leo had abandoned her. There was a cruel irony in the situation. "And why is she back now?" Sophia questioned, her mind racing. "She said she came for the company's anniversary to see the Sterling family. But I don't know, Sophia. She was always very unpredictable." Isabella's unpredictability was something Sophia was beginning to experience firsthand. At a business lunch, Isabella made sure to sit next to Richard, monopolizing the conversation and casting suggestive glances his way. At another event, she accidentally spilled wine on Sophia's dress, apologizing with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sophia decided she could no longer be on the defensive. She needed to understand Isabella, to understand what she wanted, and more importantly, to show her that Richard was hers. She sought out Eleanor, hoping to get some information. To her surprise, Eleanor, though still not warm, seemed less hostile. "Isabella was always an ambitious girl, Sophia," she said in a tone that suggested a deeper story. "She and Richard were a beautiful couple, but she had other plans. She wanted the world, and Richard at the time couldn't offer her that." Eleanor's revelation shed some light for Sophia. Isabella hadn't left Richard for lack of love, but for ambition. And, now with Richard at the peak of his career, with a consolidated empire, she was back. Sophia confronted Isabella at a social event. "Isabella, can we talk for a moment?" Isabella smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, dear. What about?" "About Richard, and about your past with him." Isabella's expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know you were engaged," Sophia said, her voice firm. "And I know you left him. Why are you back now?" Isabella laughed, a cold, calculating laugh. "You're smarter than I thought, Sophia. But don't delude yourself. Richard and I have a history you'll never be a part of. He has always loved me, and I've come back to claim what's mine." Isabella's confession was a blow, but also a liberation. Uncertainty gave way to clarity. Isabella wasn't a passive threat. She was a declared adversary. Sophia looked at Isabella, a glint of determination in her eyes. Richard is not an object, Isabella. He's a man, and he chose me. He loves me, and I won't let you destroy what we've built." The conversation ended there, but the battle was just beginning. Isabella, with her beauty and her history with Richard, was a formidable opponent. But Sophia, the abandoned bride who found love where she least expected it, was ready to fight. She had overcome humiliation, insecurity, and now she would face Richard's past head-on. The war for the millionaire's heart was declared, and Sophia was determined to be the winner. She knew Richard loved her, and that love would be her greatest weapon. Isabella's declaration of war didn't intimidate Sophia. On the contrary, it ignited a flame of determination within her. She was no longer the naive young woman who cowered in the face of adversity. Life with Richard, the battles she had already fought and won, had transformed her into a strong and resilient woman. She loved Richard, and that love was her shield and her sword. Isabella, for her part, wasted no time. She began to appear frequently at the company, claiming meetings with the board or other directors, but always finding a way to cross Richard's path. Her glances were loaded with insinuation, her words with memories of a past only the two of them shared. She tried to undermine Sophia's confidence, planting doubts about the solidity of her marriage. "Richard has always been a man of intense passion, Sophia," she said on one occasion, with an enigmatic smile. "He gives his heart and soul, and when he loves forever." The implication was clear. His love for Isabella was eternal, and Sophia was just an interlude. Sophia, however, refused to be shaken. She trusted Richard. With every attempt by Isabella to create discord, Sophia grew even closer to her husband. She shared her worries, her fears, and Richard, with his patience and affection, reassured her, "There is nothing in my past that can change what I feel for you." "Sophia," he said one night, holding her tight, "Isabella is a memory, a scar, but you are my present and my future. She has no power over us." Richard's words were a balm to Sophia's soul, but she knew Isabella wouldn't give up easily. Isabella's strategy was subtle but effective. She didn't attack directly, but created situations that forced Richard to relive the past, to remember the feelings that had once united them. One day, Isabella accidentally dropped a box of old photos in Richard's office. The photos showed intimate moments, trips, laughter, a love that seemed genuine. Sophia found them and felt a pang in her heart. It was hard to compete with such a vivid past. Richard, upon seeing the photos, was visibly shaken. He picked them up, leafed through them in silence, and Sophia saw a melancholy in his eyes that worried her. "She's trying to manipulate us, Richard," Sophia said, her voice soft. "She wants you to remember what you had." He nodded, his eyes still fixed on the photos. "I know, but it won't work. I'm not the same man anymore, Sophia. And you are not Isabella." Despite Richard's reassurance, Sophia felt the need to do something. She couldn't just wait for Isabella to give up. She needed to show Richard and herself that their love was stronger than any ghost from the past. Sophia decided to organize an intimate dinner for Richard at their home. She prepared his favorite dish, lit candles, and put on soft music. She wanted to recreate the atmosphere of intimacy and complicity they had built. During dinner, Sophia spoke about her feelings, about how he had saved her, not just from humiliation, but from a life without purpose. She talked about how he had taught her to love again, to trust, to be strong. Richard listened, his eyes fixed on hers, and Sophia saw the melancholy disappear, replaced by a glow of love and gratitude. He took her hand, kissing it tenderly. "Sophia," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. I wouldn't trade a single second of our present for all of my past." That night, they made love with an intensity that sealed the commitment of their hearts. It was a reaffirmation of their love, a silent promise that they would face any obstacle together. The next day, Richard made a decision. He called a meeting with Isabella in Sophia's presence. "Isabella," he began, his voice firm and controlled, "I appreciate your concern for the company and the family, but I need you to understand something. I am a married man, and I love my wife. I ask that you respect that. Isabella, caught off guard by Richard's frankness, tried to hide her anger. "Richard, you know I've always wanted what's best for you. I'm just worried about you, about the decisions you've been making." "My decisions are my own, Isabella," he replied without flinching. "And my decision is to build a life with Sophia. I'm asking you to stop these insinuations, these attempts to destabilize us. If you can't do that, then I will have to ask you to step away from the company and from my life." Richard's threat was serious. Isabella, who had been counting on Eleanor's influence and Richard's nostalgia, had not expected such a strong reaction. She looked at Sophia, a glint of hatred in her eyes. "You'll regret this, Richard," she said, her voice laced with venom. "You don't know who you're dealing with." She stood up and stormed out of the room, slamming the door. Sophia looked at Richard, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. They had won a battle, but the war wasn't over yet. Isabella was not the type of person to accept defeat easily. Despite the victory, Sophia felt that something was still to come. Isabella's threat was real, and the woman seemed to have a plan B. She wasn't just a jealous ex-girlfriend, she was a woman with a complex past and a relentless determination. And Sophia knew that to protect her love, she would have to be prepared for anything. Isabella's next move could be more dangerous than anything they could imagine. Isabella's abrupt exit left a heavy silence in the office. Richard, though victorious in the confrontation, looked exhausted. Sophia felt a mix of relief and a pang of worry. Isabella was not one to give up, and her final threat echoed in Sophia's mind. "You don't know who you're dealing with." In the days that followed, Isabella vanished from the public scene. There were no more casual appearances at the company, no more accidental encounters at social events. The calm, however, was more unsettling than the storm. Sophia knew Isabella was plotting something, and the uncertainty was a heavy burden. Richard, for his part, tried to reassure her. "She'll get tired of it, Sophia. She'll see she doesn't stand a chance and move on." But Sophia wasn't so convinced. She had seen the hatred in Isabella's eyes, the determination in her voice. That woman would not give up so easily. The couple's life, despite the shadow of Isabella, continued to flourish. The company's expansion project, under the joint leadership of Richard and Sophia, was about to launch, promising resounding success. Their professional partnership solidified with each passing day, and their mutual admiration grew. It was amidst this phase of success and happiness that the first piece of Isabella's puzzle began to fall into place. An anonymous article was published on a widely read gossip blog, insinuating that Richard Sterling's marriage was a sham, an arrangement to cover up a financial scandal involving the company. The article didn't name names, but the descriptions were clear enough for everyone to know who it was about. Sophia and Richard were caught by surprise. The article was full of half-truths and malicious insinuations, mixing real facts with blatant lies. The intention was clear: to discredit Richard, tarnish his reputation, and by extension Sophia's. "Isabella," Richard snarled, crumpling the newspaper in his hands. "She's behind this. I'm sure of it." Sophia agreed. "It's her style. She doesn't attack directly, but she plays dirty, planting seeds of doubt." The company was thrown into crisis. Shareholders grew anxious and investors began to question Richard's integrity. The reputation, built over years of hard work, was being stained by a cowardly attack. Richard and his legal team worked tirelessly to refute the accusations, but the truth is often slower than a lie. The tabloids seized the opportunity, turning the case into a spectacle. Eleanor, who had previously shown a certain respect for Sophia, reverted to her defensive posture. "I knew this girl would bring trouble to the family," she told Richard, in an "I told you so" tone. "She's not from our world, Richard. She doesn't understand the rules." Sophia felt the blow. The acceptance she had sought so hard seemed to be crumbling, but she didn't let it get to her. She knew she had to be strong, not just for Richard, but for herself. "It's not Sophia's fault, Mother," Richard defended, his voice firm. "Isabella is using this to hurt us, and she won't succeed." Sophia decided she wouldn't stand by idly. She began her own investigation, looking for clues that could link Isabella to the gossip blog. She used her contacts, her intelligence, her intuition, and slowly the pieces began to fit together. She discovered that the blog had been recently created by a shell company and that payments were being made through offshore accounts. It was a complex scheme, but Sophia was determined to unravel it. In one of her investigations, Sophia found a link. One of the partners in the shell company was an old acquaintance of Isabella's, a man with whom she had had a past relationship. It was the proof she needed. Sophia presented the evidence to Richard. He was impressed by her astuteness. "You're incredible, Sophia," he said, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "With this, we can prove Isabella is behind everything." With the evidence in hand, Richard and his legal team filed a lawsuit against Isabella for defamation and libel. The news of the lawsuit spread quickly, and the media, which had previously reveled in the scandal, now turned its attention to the new twist. Isabella was caught off guard. She hadn't expected Sophia to go so far to have the intelligence and courage to uncover her plan. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was irrefutable. Isabella's reputation was tarnished, and the truth about her intentions came to light. The Sterling family, who had once viewed her with admiration, now looked at her with disdain. Eleanor, in particular, felt betrayed. The scandal, which Isabella had orchestrated to destroy Richard and Sophia, ended up backfiring on her. Richard's company recovered, and investor confidence was restored. But the victory came at a price. The battle against Isabella had been exhausting, and Sophia felt the weight of the fight. She had proven her worth, her loyalty, her intelligence, but the experience left her with a new scar, a reminder that the world they lived in was ruthless. Richard, by her side, was her safe harbor. He admired her more than ever, and the love between them deepened with every challenge they overcame. They had faced the past, envy and malice, and had come out stronger. However, life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist in store. The victory over Isabella brought temporary peace, but the universe had other plans to test the strength of Sophia and Richard's love. A new revelation, a secret kept under lock and key, was about to come to light, something that would shake the foundations of the Sterling family and put their relationship to the test in a way they could never have imagined. The dust settled after the battle with Isabella, but the calm was only on the surface. The victory, though sweet, left a bitter taste. Sophia and Richard had proven the strength of their love and the solidity of their partnership, but the experience had marked them. Life in high society was a minefield, and they knew new challenges would arise. Eleanor, after Isabella's disgrace, finally began to see Sophia in a new light. Professional admiration turned into a cautious respect, and even a certain affection. She had seen Sophia's intelligence and loyalty, and realized the young woman was not an opportunist, but a woman worthy of her son. The relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, once tense, began to soften, paving the way for a more harmonious coexistence. The Sterling Corporation thrived under Richard's leadership and Sophia's invaluable contribution. The expansion project was a resounding success, solidifying the company's market position and Richard's reputation as a visionary. Sophia, for her part, became a respected figure in the business world, her story of overcoming adversity inspiring many. The couple's personal life also flourished. They moved into a larger house, a home that reflected the union of their tastes and personalities. The nights were filled with deep conversations, laughter, and the certainty that they had found in each other the love they had been searching for. It was amidst this phase of fulfillment that the closely guarded secret began to unravel. A secret that belonged not to Isabella nor to Leo, but to the Sterling family itself, a secret Richard had kept hidden for years, unaware of the full extent of its consequences. It all started with the arrival of an anonymous letter. The handwriting was elegant, but the content was disturbing. The letter hinted that Richard was not the sole legitimate heir to the Sterling fortune, that there was another son, a son who had been hidden for years. Richard read the letter, his face pale. He showed it to Sophia, who felt a chill run down her spine. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" she asked, trying to rationalize. "I don't know, Sophia," he replied, his voice tense. "But the way it's written, It seems to be from someone who knows my family's history. The letter gave no details, only hinting at the existence of an illegitimate son, the fruit of his father's previous relationship before he married Eleanor. The idea of having an unknown brother deeply shook Richard. He had always considered himself an only child, the undisputed heir to the Sterling Empire. Sophia, with her sharp mind, began to investigate. She knew the truth, however painful, needed to come to light. She searched for old documents, spoke with older company employees, with people who knew the Sterling family's history. The clues were scarce, but Sophia was persistent. She discovered that years before Eleanor's marriage to Richard's father, he had had a relationship with a woman from a humble background, a company employee. The relationship was brief but intense, and ended abruptly when the woman disappeared without a trace. The story was a taboo in the Sterling family, a secret Eleanor had strived to bury. She had done everything to erase any trace of this relationship, to protect the family's image and Richard's inheritance. Sophia confronted Eleanor with the information she had gathered. The matriarch initially denied it vehemently, but Sophia's persistence and the irrefutable evidence made her yield. "Yes, it's true," Eleanor confessed, her voice choked. "Richard's father had a son with that woman. But she disappeared, and we never heard from her again. I did what I thought was right to protect the family, to protect Richard." The revelation shocked Richard. He felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. Anger for being deceived for so many years, sadness for the existence of a brother he never knew, and confusion about what to do with this new truth. "Who is he, Mother?" Richard asked, his voice trembling. "Where is he?" Eleanor didn't know. She had paid the woman to leave, to never come back, and had never heard from her again. The secret had been kept under lock and key, and now, years later, it resurfaced to shake the foundations of the Sterling family. Sophia and Richard joined forces to unravel the mystery. They knew the search would be difficult, but the idea of having a brother, a family member who had been denied, was something Richard could not ignore. The search for Richard's unknown brother became an obsession. They hired private investigators, scoured archives, followed leads, often false ones, that led them to dead ends. With every step, the complexity of the Sterling family's web of secrets was revealed. The secret of Richard's unknown brother was not just a family matter. It was a matter of inheritance, legitimacy, and identity, and the revelation of this secret promised to shake not only Richard's life, but also the structure of the entire Sterling Empire. The family, which had tried so hard to keep up appearances, was about to have its foundations rocked by a long-buried truth, and Sophia, once again, would find herself at the center of a new drama, a drama that would test the strength of her love and the resilience of her soul. The revelation of Richard's unknown brother hung over the Sterling mansion like a dense fog, altering the atmosphere of peace Sophia and Richard had built. The search for this brother became a priority, a journey that united them even more, but also brought to light the complexity and wounds of a carefully hidden past. Eleanor, though reluctant to dig up the past, eventually gave in to Richard and Sophia's determination. The guilt of having kept the secret for so many years, and the fear that the truth would come out uncontrollably, pushed her to cooperate. She provided the few details she had about the mother of her late husband's other son, her name, Maria, and the fact that she worked at the Sterling family's textile mill before disappearing. The search began at the old mill, a place Richard rarely visited, but which held the roots of his empire. Sophia, with her sharp mind and methodical approach, delved into the dusty archives, the employee records, searching for any clue about Maria. It was meticulous, almost archaeological work that required patience and an attention to detail that only Sophia possessed. Richard, for his part, felt increasingly restless. The idea of having a brother, someone with his blood, who had been denied and perhaps suffered because of a family secret, deeply disturbed him. He wondered what this brother would be like, if he would resemble him, if he would have inherited the Sterling temperament. After weeks of investigation, Sophia found a record. Maria Silva, a mill employee, dismissed for personal reasons shortly before the birth of her son. The record included an old address in a working-class neighborhood in Queens. It was a fragile lead, but it was a start. They went to the address. The simple, modest house was abandoned. Old neighbors with fading memories barely remembered Maria. Hope began to dwindle, but Sophia refused to give up. She felt they were close, that the truth was within their grasp. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A retired mill employee who had worked with Maria remembered a crucial detail. Maria had a sister, Anna, who lived in a small town upstate and was always very close to her. The drive upstate was long but filled with anticipation. Upon arriving, in the small town they found Anna, a simple woman, her face marked by time but with a kind gaze. She was moved to see Richard and Sophia, and the story she told shook the foundations of the Sterling family. Maria, her sister, had died a few years ago from an illness, but before she died she had entrusted Anna with a secret, the son she had with Richard's father. The boy, named Daniel, had been raised by Anna as her own son to protect him from the stigma of being an illegitimate child. Daniel, now a grown man, was an artist. He lived off his art, painting canvases that depicted the simple life of the countryside, but with a depth and sensitivity that impressed Richard and Sophia. He had no idea of his true origins, nor that he was heir to one of the country's largest fortunes. The meeting between Richard and Daniel was charged with emotion. Daniel, initially suspicious, was shocked to learn the truth. The physical resemblance between them was undeniable, and the way their eyes lit up when they spoke of art, a passion Richard also shared, was an invisible bond that united them. Richard, upon seeing Daniel, felt an immediate connection. This wasn't just a brother, it was a piece of his history that had been stolen. He felt a mix of joy and guilt. Joy for having found Daniel, and guilt for him having been deprived of a life of privilege. The news of Daniel's existence shook the Sterling family. Eleanor, though relieved that the secret was out, felt the weight of her actions. She knew she would have to atone somehow. Daniel, for his part, was in shock. His simple life, his identity, everything he knew had been turned upside down. He was a Sterling, heir to an empire, not just a small-town artist. Daniel's revelation brought up complex issues of inheritance, legitimacy, and identity. The press, always eager for a scandal, soon discovered the story, and the Sterling family found themselves once again in the spotlight. Richard, with Sophia's unconditional support, decided that Daniel would be recognized as a Sterling. He didn't want his brother to suffer the same deprivations his mother had. He wanted Daniel to have his rightful place in the family. Richard's decision was a shock to some family members who saw Daniel as a threat to the inheritance. But Richard was adamant. He had found his brother and he would fight for him. Sophia once again found herself at the center of a family drama. She had helped Richard uncover the secret, find his brother, and now she would help him integrate Daniel into the family to build a new story, a story of acceptance and love. Daniel's arrival in the Sterling family promised to bring new dynamics, new challenges, but also the possibility of a more complete, more united family. The life of Sophia and Richard, which had already been a roller coaster of emotions, was about to gain a new chapter, a chapter of redemption, forgiveness, and a love that proved ever stronger in the face of all adversity. The Sterling family, once so closed off in its secrets, was about to open up to a new era, an era of truths and rediscovered family ties. The news of Daniel's existence and his subsequent integration into the Sterling family reverberated like an earthquake through social and business circles. The press, always hungry for a good story, turned the family drama into headlines speculating about the inheritance, legitimacy, and the future of the Sterling Empire. Richard, with Sophia's help, weathered the media storm with the same firmness he used in business, shielding Daniel from excessive exposure. Daniel, for his part, was in a whirlwind of emotions. The simple, quiet life he knew had been replaced by a world of luxury, power, and expectations. He was an artist, a dreamer, and the universe of business and high society was a shock to him. The adjustment would not be easy. Richard, with the sensitivity Sophia had awakened in him, dedicated himself to helping Daniel through this transition. He introduced him to the family, to friends, to the business. But above all, he treated him like a brother, with affection and respect. Sophia, with her natural empathy, became a bridge between the two worlds, helping Daniel feel more at ease and understand the complexities of the sterling life. Eleanor, initially shocked and reluctant, began to warm up to Daniel. The guilt of having denied her grandson's existence for so many years weighed on her conscience. She saw in Daniel traces of Richard's father and an artistic sensitivity that reminded her of her own youth. Gradually, her coldness gave way to genuine affection, and Daniel found in Eleanor a grandmother who, though late, was sincere in her affection. Daniel's presence brought a new dynamic to the Sterling family. With his different worldview, his simplicity, and his passion for art, he began to question some of the family's ingrained traditions and values. He didn't care about status, money, or appearances. He cared about truth, authenticity, and beauty. This new perspective initially caused friction. Some family members saw Daniel as a threat, an intruder who could destabilize the established order. But Richard, with Sophia's support, defended his brother, showing that diversity of thought could be a strength, not a weakness. Daniel, in turn, began to take an interest in the family business, not for the power or money, but for the possibility of using the company as a platform to promote art and culture. He proposed the creation of an arts foundation, sponsored by the Sterling Corporation, that would support young artists and promote culture in underserved communities. Daniel's idea was initially met with skepticism, but Sophia, who saw the proposal's potential, convinced Richard to support it. Together, they presented the project to the board, showing not only the social impact but also the brand image return and added value the foundation would bring to the company. The project was approved, and Daniel, with the support of Richard and Sophia, dove headfirst into creating the Sterling Arts Foundation. He found a purpose, a way to reconcile his love for art with the responsibility of being a Sterling. The Sterling Arts Foundation became a success. Daniel, with his passion and vision, transformed the foundation into a hub of cultural effervescence, attracting artists, promoting exhibitions, and bringing art to where it was most needed. He became a respected figure, not just as a Sterling heir, but as a visionary in the art world. The relationship between Richard and Daniel deepened every day. They discovered common passions, shared values, and a connection that went beyond blood. Richard, who had always been a businessman, began to see the world through different eyes, to appreciate the beauty of art, the importance of culture. Sophia watched it all with a heart full of joy. She had helped unite a family, heal old wounds, and build a more promising future. She had found her place, not just as Richard's wife, but as a transformative force in the lives of the Sterlings. However, life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist. The peace and harmony they had achieved were fragile, and a new challenge was about to arise, a challenge that would test the strength of their family ties and the solidity of Sophia and Richard's love in a way they could never have imagined. The Sterling Arts Foundation, which Daniel had created with such care, began to attract the attention of malicious people. A group of unscrupulous investors, led by a ruthless businessman, began plotting to embezzle funds from the foundation, using it as a front for their own interests. Daniel, naive and trusting, didn't notice the trap. He was so focused on his passion for art that he missed the warning signs. Richard and Sophia, with their experience in the business world, began to grow suspicious. They felt something was wrong, that the generosity of the foundation's new partners was too good to be true. The Sterling family, having just found their peace, was about to be dragged into a new scandal, a scandal that threatened not only the foundation's reputation, but also Daniel's integrity and the family's fortune. And Sophia, once again, would find herself at the center of the storm, fighting to protect those she loved from an invisible and dangerous threat. Sophia and Richard's intuition rarely failed them. The excessive generosity of the new partners of the Sterling Arts Foundation, led by businessman Arthur Brandon, set off alarms. Arthur, a man with an easy smile and a calculating gaze, had infiltrated Daniel's circle with alarming speed, promising huge investments and unprecedented expansion for the foundation. Daniel, with his artistic soul and inexperience in the business world, was dazzled. He saw Arthur as a benefactor, someone who shared his passion for art and was willing to invest heavily to help the foundation reach new heights. Richard and Sophia, however, saw a predator. "There's something wrong with this Arthur Brandon, Daniel," Richard warned during a family dinner. "He's promising too much, too fast. Deals like this are rarely transparent." Daniel, however, was blinded by enthusiasm. "You're being too skeptical, Richard. Arthur is a visionary. He believes in art. He believes in the foundation. He's going to help us bring art to millions of people." Sophia tried to approach the issue more subtly. "Daniel, it's important to be cautious. Large investments always come with great responsibilities. We need to make sure the foundation's interests are protected." But Daniel, feeling underestimated and perhaps a little resentful of the interference, ignored the warnings. He saw Richard and Sophia's concern as an attempt to control the foundation, to limit his autonomy. Richard and Sophia's suspicion grew when they began to notice irregularities in the financial reports presented by Arthur. Small discrepancies, unjustified expenses, fund movements that didn't seem to make sense. They knew they had to act, and fast. Sophia, with her experience in data analysis and her sharp mind, dove into the foundation's documents. She spent sleepless nights reviewing contracts, bank statements, and invoices. With each new discovery, Arthur Brandon's web of fraud became clearer. He was using the foundation as a front for money laundering, diverting resources to his own companies and offshore accounts. Art was just a pretext, a way to legitimize his illicit operations. Richard, upon seeing the irrefutable evidence Sophia had collected, was furious. "This man is a criminal. He's using Daniel's passion for his own ends." They tried to confront Daniel with the evidence, but he refused to believe them. "You're just jealous of my success. You don't want the foundation to grow. Arthur is my friend. He would never do this." Daniel's denial was a blow to Richard and Sophia. They knew they had to protect him, even if he didn't want to be protected. The Sterling family's reputation and the foundation's integrity were at stake. Richard, with his experience in crisis management, decided to act cautiously. He didn't want to expose Daniel to the scandal or damage the foundation's image. He and Sophia devised a plan to unmask Arthur Brandon without causing an unnecessary uproar. They sought out a renowned law firm specializing in financial crimes. With Sophia's evidence, the lawyers began to build a solid case against Arthur. The strategy was to gather all the evidence, confront Arthur with it, and force him to confess or expose himself publicly. The opportunity arose during a major fundraising gala for the Sterling Arts Foundation, organized by Arthur Brandon. The event would be attended by important figures, investors, and the press. It would be the perfect stage to unmask the criminal. Sophia and Richard, with the help of the lawyers, prepared a detailed presentation showing all the irregularities and proof of the embezzlement. They knew it would be a delicate moment, that it could shake confidence in the foundation, but it was the only way to protect Daniel and the family's reputation. On the day of the event, the tension was palpable. Arthur Brandon, with his confident smile, gave a speech about the importance of art and philanthropy. Daniel, by his side, looked proud. When it was Richard's turn to speak, he gave the floor to Sophia. She, with her calm and steady voice, began to present the evidence. At first, Arthur tried to interrupt her, claiming they were baseless accusations. But Sophia, with the help of the lawyers, presented the documents, the statements, the irrefutable proof. The ballroom fell silent. Daniel, upon seeing the evidence, turned pale. The reality hit him. He had been deceived, manipulated, used. Anger and disappointment washed over him. Arthur Brandon, cornered, tried to flee but was stopped by security. The police, who had been alerted by Richard, arrived and arrested him on the spot. The scandal was inevitable. The press, who were present, recorded everything. The Sterling Arts Foundation, which had been created to promote art, found itself embroiled in a corruption scandal. Daniel was devastated. He felt guilty, ashamed, betrayed. Richard and Sophia supported him, showing him he wasn't alone. They helped him rebuild the foundation, restore its reputation, and regain trust. The Sterling family once again had faced a crisis and emerged stronger. The union of Richard and Sophia, the strength of their love, had been the key to overcoming yet another challenge. But life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist. Overcoming this scandal brought a new clarity to Daniel. but it also made him question his place in the business world. And Sophia, who had become the rock of the family, was about to face a personal challenge that would make her question her own choices and priorities. The fall of Arthur Brandon and the subsequent scandal left deep scars on the Sterling Arts Foundation and, most of all, on Daniel. The naivety that characterized him was replaced by a bitter caution, and his passion for art, though intact, was now accompanied by a disillusionment with the business world. Richard and Sophia dedicated themselves to rebuilding the foundation, clearing its name and restructuring its operations to ensure full transparency. Daniel, however, couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and shame. He felt responsible for allowing Arthur Brandon to infiltrate and tarnish the name of the foundation he loved so much. Despite Richard and Sophia's unconditional support, he began to isolate himself, diving even deeper into his art as a form of escape. "He needs time, Sophia," Richard would say, watching his brother withdraw. "He's processing everything. It's a shock for someone who has always lived in a world of purity and idealism." Sophia agreed but felt a pang of worry. Daniel was a sensitive artist, and the wound seemed deeper than they imagined. She tried to reach out, to offer advice, but he shut himself off, preferring the company of his brushes and canvases. Despite the drama with Daniel, Sophia and Richard's, life continued its course. The Sterling Corporation prospered, and the partnership between them grew stronger every day. Sophia had become a key player in the family business, her intelligence and intuition increasingly valued by Richard and even by Eleanor. It was amidst this routine of intense work and supporting Daniel that Sophia began to feel something different, an unusual fatigue, morning sickness, a heightened sensitivity to smells. At first, she attributed the symptoms to stress, to the daily hustle. But as the days went by, a suspicion began to grow in her heart. She took a pregnancy test, in secret, with trembling hands. The positive result appeared in seconds, confirming what her body was already telling her. Sophia was pregnant. The news took her by surprise. Although she and Richard had talked about having children in the future, pregnancy was not in their immediate plans. A wave of emotions washed over her: joy, fear, excitement, apprehension. She was going to be a mother. The first person she told was Richard. He was in his office, absorbed in paperwork, when Sophia walked in, the pregnancy test hidden behind her back. "Richard, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice choked with emotion. He looked up, noticing the seriousness in her voice. "What is it, my love? Did something happen with Daniel?" Sophia shook her head, her eyes welling up. She held out her hand, revealing the small object. Richard looked at the test, then at her, and a slow, radiant smile spread across his face. "Pregnant?" he whispered, his voice full of disbelief and joy. "We're going to have a baby?" He hugged her tightly, spinning her in the air. Tears streamed down Sophia's face, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. They were going to be parents. The news of the pregnancy brought a new light to the Sterling family. Eleanor, who had always dreamed of being a grandmother, was ecstatic. She began planning the nursery, the baby's room decor, the list of names. The coldness that characterized her gave way to a tenderness Sophia had never seen before. Even Daniel, who had been reclusive in his world of art, seemed to awaken. The prospect of having a nephew, a new member of the family, brought a sparkle to his eyes. He began to draw, to paint, to create works of art inspired by Sophia's pregnancy, by the promise of a new life. Sophia's pregnancy became the center of the family's attention. Richard was more attentive than ever, caring for her with an affection that moved her. He accompanied her to every doctor's appointment, read books on fatherhood, and spoke to the baby in her belly with a sweetness that melted Sophia's heart. Life seemed perfect. Richard's love, the family's acceptance, the promise of a future with a child. Sophia felt complete, fulfilled. However, life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist. Sophia and Richard's happiness was about to be tested by an unexpected challenge, a challenge that came not from external enemies, but from within, from something they could never control. During a routine checkup, Sophia's doctor noticed something unusual. More in-depth tests were ordered, and the wait for the results was agonizing. The joy of pregnancy was replaced by a growing apprehension. The news came like a blow. Sophia had a rare condition, a pregnancy complication that put both her life and the baby's at risk. The pregnancy, which should have been a period of pure joy, turned into a fight for life. Richard and Sophia found themselves facing an impossible decision. The life of one or the life of the other. The love that united them would be tested in a way they could never have imagined. Sophia's strength, the resilience that had helped her overcome so many challenges, would be put to the test once more. And the Sterling family, which had just found its peace, would find itself again in the midst of a storm that threatened to take with it the greatest joy of their lives. The news of Sophia's pregnancy complication fell upon the Sterling family like a bolt from the blue. Joy and anticipation gave way to a paralyzing fear. What should have been the happiest time of Sophia and Richard's lives turned into a race against time, a fight for the lives of mother and child. Richard, the ruthless businessman, the cold and calculating strategist, found himself powerless in the face of life's fragility. He sought out the best doctors, the most renowned opinions, but the answer was always the same. Sophia's condition was rare and serious, requiring a difficult decision. "We have to choose, Richard," the doctor explained, his voice gentle but firm. "The mother's life or the baby's life. We cannot guarantee the safety of both." Those words echoed in Richard's mind like a sentence. How could he choose? How could he decide between the two people he loved most in the world? He looked at Sophia, who was pale but possessed a determination that surprised him. "I'm not giving up on our child, Richard," she said, her voice weak but full of conviction. "We're going to fight for both of us." Sophia's decision, though risky, gave Richard new strength. He refused to accept defeat. If there was a chance, however small, they would take it. The Sterling family rallied around Sophia. Eleanor, with her life experience, became a pillar of support, caring for Sophia with an affection that went beyond duty. Daniel, who had found new inspiration in Sophia's pregnancy, devoted himself to her with touching dedication, painting canvases that expressed the hope and strength of life. The house, once filled with laughter and plans for the future, was now a sanctuary of prayers and hope. Sophia spent her days on absolute bed rest, under the care of a specialized medical team. Richard never left her side, reading to her, talking, holding her hand, transmitting all his strength and love. The pregnancy progressed, but with each day new challenges arose. Sophia's health deteriorated, and the risk to the baby increased. The doctors warned of the need for an intervention, but Sophia refused to give up. "I feel he's strong, Richard," she would whisper, her hand on her belly. "He's going to make it." Sophia's faith was contagious. Richard, who had always been a man of science and reason, found new hope in his wife's faith. He prayed, he pleaded, he begged for a miracle. News of Sophia's high-risk pregnancy spread, and the community united in a wave of prayers and support. Letters, messages, and flowers arrived at the Sterling mansion, showing the affection and solidarity of the people. In the midst of this fight for life, a new revelation came to light. A nurse who had worked with Sophia's doctor at a research hospital contacted Richard. She had read about Sophia's case in the media and had crucial information. She revealed that Sophia's doctor, Dr. Evans, was a renowned researcher, but had been removed from a research project for using experimental methods on patients without proper consent. He was testing a new, unapproved technique for cases like Sophia's. The revelation shocked Richard. He confronted Dr. Evans, who, cornered, confessed. He had been using Sophia as a guinea pig, hoping to prove the effectiveness of his technique and restore his reputation. Richard's anger was overwhelming. He had entrusted the lives of his wife and child to an unscrupulous man. He fired Dr. Evans and hired a new medical team, who, based on the nurse's information, discovered that Sophia's condition was not as severe as Dr. Evans had diagnosed. The complication existed, yes, but it was treatable with conventional methods, without the need for a drastic choice between mother and child. Dr. Evans had exaggerated the severity of the situation to justify his experiment. The news brought immense relief to the Sterling family. Sophia, who had been subjected to unnecessary stress, began to recover. The new medical team, with proper treatment, managed to stabilize her condition and ensure the baby's safety. Sophia's pregnancy, which had been a roller coaster of emotions, finally found its way back to normal. Every day, she felt stronger, more confident. The baby grew healthy, and the promise of a new life filled the house with joy. Richard, who had faced the possibility of losing his wife and child, felt immense gratitude. He had learned a valuable lesson about the fragility of life and the importance of trusting his intuition. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, emerged stronger and more united. The fight for the lives of Sophia and the baby had shown them the importance of love, faith, and unity. And then, on a sunny day, the miracle happened. Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby boy, with Richard's eyes and Sophia's smile. They named him Gabriel, the messenger angel, the symbol of hope and renewal. Gabriel's arrival brought a new era to the Sterling family. The house, once filled with apprehension, was now a nest of love and joy. Richard, the ruthless businessman, transformed into a doting father, and Sophia, the abandoned bride, found the fullness of her existence in motherhood. But life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist. Sophia and Richard's happiness was complete, but fate, in its unpredictability, was about to present a new challenge, a challenge that would come from an unexpected place, and that would test the strength of their love in a way they could never have imagined. The shadow of a past they thought they had overcome was about to resurface, bringing with it a new threat to their newfound peace. Gabriel's arrival brought an indescribable light into Sophia and Richard's life. The little angel, with his curious eyes and toothless grin, filled every corner of the Sterling mansion with contagious joy. Richard, the ruthless businessman, transformed into a devoted father who changed diapers with the same dexterity he used to close major deals. Sophia, for her part, blossomed in motherhood, discovering a strength and love she had never imagined possessing. The Sterling family, once marked by secrets and conflicts, found in Gabriel a unifying bond. Eleanor, the austere matriarch, melted for her grandson, and Daniel, the sensitive artist, found in Gabriel a new source of inspiration for his canvases. Life seemed to have finally found its balance, its harmony. However, complete happiness, like a rare diamond, is often coveted, and fate, in its unpredictability, was about to present a new challenge, a challenge that would come from an unexpected place, and that would test the strength of Sophia and Richard's love in a way they could never have imagined. It all began with the reopening of an old case at the Sterling Corporation, a lawsuit that had been dismissed years ago, involving a land dispute in a remote rural area, resurfaced with new evidence. The case, which seemed insignificant in the vast web of Sterling's business dealings, began to take on alarming proportions. Richard, with his legal team, delved into the case. At first, it seemed like a routine matter, a mere annoyance, but as the investigations progressed, a web of corruption and illegalities began to unravel, involving important figures in politics and the judiciary. What intrigued Richard most was how the case had been reopened. There was an invisible hand behind it, someone with an interest in digging up the past and exposing the Sterling family to a scandal. Sophia, with her sharp mind, began to notice a pattern. The new evidence, the leaks to the press, the way the case was being handled, it all seemed orchestrated. She felt there was something more, something personal behind it all. Sophia's intuition was confirmed when a name began to surface in the investigations. The name of an old rival of Richard's, a ruthless businessman named Marcus Vance. Marcus had been a rival of Richard's in the past, a man who had lost major deals to Sterling and harbored a deep grudge. Marcus Vance was known for his cruelty and his thirst for revenge. He had been defeated by Richard on several occasions, and now he saw the land dispute case as an opportunity to get even, to destroy the Sterling family's reputation and consequently Richard's. The Sterling family found themselves once again at the center of a storm. The press, always eager for a scandal, began to report on the case, insinuating that Sterling was involved in illegal practices. The company's reputation, which had been so painstakingly rebuilt after the Arthur Brandon scandal, was once again at risk. Richard, with his experience in crisis management, tried to contain the damage. He issued press releases, ensured the transparency of the investigations, but Marcus Vance's machine was powerful. He had contacts, influence, and an insatiable thirst for revenge. Sophia, by Richard's side, was his safe harbor. She helped him analyze documents, devise strategies, and remain calm amidst the chaos. But behind the facade of strength, she felt a growing fear. Marcus Vance was a dangerous enemy, and he would not hesitate to use any means to achieve his goals. The situation worsened when Marcus Vance began to attack Richard's personal life. He hired private investigators, dug into the Sterling family's past, looking for any stain, any secret he could use against them. And then he found it. A secret kept under lock and key, a secret not even Richard knew. A secret that involved Eleanor herself, and that had the potential to destroy not only the family's reputation, but also the trust between mother and son. Marcus Vance discovered that Eleanor, in her youth, had had a secret relationship with a man of humble origins, a man who worked on the family's farm. From that relationship, a daughter was born, a sister of Richard's who had been given up for adoption shortly after birth to avoid a scandal that could tarnish the Sterling family name. The revelation was a shock to Richard. He had just found a brother, and now he discovered he had a sister who had been denied and abandoned by his own mother. The pain of betrayal, of the lie, was overwhelming. Eleanor, confronted with the truth, collapsed. She confessed to Richard through tears that she had been forced to give up her daughter, that she had been blackmailed by her own father to maintain appearances. She had lived with the guilt her entire life, and now the secret she had tried so hard to hide was exposed. The Sterling family was in pieces. The trust between Richard and Eleanor was shattered, and the shadow of Marcus Vance loomed over them, threatening to destroy everything they had built. Sophia, once again, found herself at the center of the storm. She had helped Richard find Daniel, and now she would help him find his sister. But the search would be even more difficult as Richard's sister had been given up for adoption, and the records were sealed. The fight against Marcus Vance and the search for Richard's lost sister became Sophia and Richard's new mission. They knew it would be an arduous battle, but the love that united them, the strength of their family, would be their most powerful weapon against malice and revenge. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, was about to face its greatest trial, a trial that would define their future and the strength of their bonds. The revelation of Richard's secret sister, the fruit of Eleanor's painful and hidden past, shook the foundations of the Sterling family in an unprecedented way. The trust between mother and son, which Sophia had helped rebuild, was once again in tatters. Richard felt betrayed, not just by the lie, but by the denial of a part of his own history. Eleanor, for her part, was in a state of despair. The secret that had tormented her for decades had been exposed in the cruelest way possible, used as a weapon by Marcus Vance. Guilt and shame consumed her, and she feared losing her son's love and respect. Sophia, with her sensitivity and empathy, became Richard's pillar. She helped him process the pain, the anger, the confusion. She reminded him that Eleanor was also a victim, forced to make a terrible decision at a time when social judgment was merciless. "She did what she thought was right to survive, Richard," Sophia said, hugging him. "To protect herself and you. Don't judge her with today's eyes." Sophia's words gradually calmed the storm in Richard's heart. He knew she was right. The society of that era was cruel to women who strayed from the norm. He approached his mother, not to forgive her, but to understand her pain. The priority now was to find his sister. Marcus Vance, in his thirst for revenge, had leaked the story to the press, turning the search into a public spectacle. The Sterling family was once again in the spotlight, but this time the story was even more complex and painful. The search for Richard's lost sister was a monumental challenge. Adoption records were sealed, and time had erased many clues. Sophia and Richard, with the help of private investigators, dove into a meticulous investigation, searching through orphanages, registry offices, and old archives. Daniel, who had recovered from the shock of the foundation scandal, dedicated himself to the search with renewed passion. He felt that finding his sister would be a way to redeem the family, to heal the wounds of the past. With every lead, every dead end, hope dwindled. But Sophia and Richard's determination only grew. They knew Richard's sister deserved to know the truth, deserved to have a family. The breakthrough came in an unexpected way. A retired social worker, who had worked at the orphanage where Richard's sister was placed, contacted the Sterling family. She had read the story in the press and felt she had to help. She revealed that the girl had been adopted by a middle-class family living in a neighboring town. The girl's name was Anna. The social worker, who had grown fond of the child, had kept in touch with the adoptive family for a few years and had an old address. Emotion swept over the Sterling family. Anna. A name, an identity, a hope. Sophia and Richard went to the address. The house, simple and well-kept, was a home. A middle-aged woman with a kind smile and eyes that resembled Eleanor's opened the door. It was Anna. The meeting was charged with emotion. Anna, who had always known she was adopted but had never searched for her biological family, was shocked to learn the truth. She was Richard Sterling's sister, Eleanor's daughter, heir to an empire. The physical resemblance between Anna and Eleanor was striking. The same eyes, the same face shape, the same natural elegance. Richard felt an immediate connection, a sense of familiarity that went beyond blood. Anna was a strong and independent woman. She had built her own life, her own path. She was an art teacher at a public school and dedicated her life to helping underprivileged children. She didn't care about money, status, or power. She cared about love, education, and social justice. The news of Anna's existence and her life story moved everyone. The press, which had previously reveled in the scandal, now surrendered to the beauty of the family reunion story. Marcus Vance, who had orchestrated everything to destroy the Sterling family, saw his plan crumble. The revelation of the lost sister, which he had hoped would be a scandal, turned into a story of redemption and love. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, emerged stronger and more united. Anna's arrival brought a new perspective, a new dimension to the family. With her simplicity and her passion for social justice, she began to influence everyone, showing that true wealth was not in money, but in human values. Eleanor, who had lived with guilt for so many years, found forgiveness and redemption in Anna. She dedicated herself to making up for lost time, to building a relationship with the daughter she had been forced to abandon. Richard, who had found a brother and a sister, felt his family was complete. He had learned that family was not just about blood, but about love, respect, and acceptance. Sophia, who had been the driving force behind all the discoveries, felt a deep satisfaction. She had helped heal wounds, unite people, and build a more just and loving future. The Sterling family, once so closed off in its secrets, was now open, transparent, united. Anna's arrival brought a new era, an era of social commitment, responsibility, and love. But life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist. The Sterling family's happiness was complete, but fate, in its unpredictability, was about to present a new challenge, a challenge that would come from an unexpected place, and that would test the strength of their love in a way they could never have imagined. The presence of Anna, with her passion for social justice, would begin to bother some members of the company's board, who saw her ideas as a threat to profits. And Sophia once again would find herself at the center of a new conflict, a conflict that would put the Sterling family's values and the strength of their love to the test. Anna's integration into the Sterling family was a balm for past wounds, but also a catalyst for new dynamics. Her simplicity, her passion for social justice, and her worldview, so distinct from the corporate universe of the Sterlings, began to create friction. The newfound peace was, as always, fragile. Anna, with her experience as an art teacher in public schools, quickly noticed the social inequalities and lack of opportunities for young talents in underserved communities. She proposed to Richard and Daniel that the Sterling Arts Foundation expand beyond promoting artists to also focus on arts education and social inclusion. The idea was met with enthusiasm by Daniel, who saw in Anna's proposal a way to redeem the foundation and give his art a new purpose. Richard, with his strategic vision, recognized the potential for social impact and brand image for the company. Eleanor, seeking redemption, fervently supported her daughter. However, Anna's proposal was not well received by everyone. Some members of the Sterling Corporation's board, the more conservative and profit-focused ones, saw Anna's ideas as a threat to the company's financial interests. They argued that the foundation should focus on projects that generated financial returns, not on charity. The main opponent was Dr. Wallace, an old board member with an outdated business vision and an aversion to any kind of change. He saw Anna as an intruder, an idealist who knew nothing about business and was jeopardizing the family's assets. Sophia, who had become a respected figure on the board, vehemently defended Anna's proposal. She argued that investing in social projects was not just a matter of corporate responsibility, but also a long-term strategy that would generate value for the Sterling brand and attract a new generation of consumers and talent. The discussion in the boardroom became heated. Dr. Wallace, with his conservative rhetoric, tried to undermine Anna's credibility, insinuating that her ideas were naive and unrealistic. Richard, who always valued harmony on the board, found himself at a crossroads. He supported Anna and Sophia, but knew he needed to maintain the company's stability. The tension escalated when Dr. Wallace, in a closed-door meeting, insinuated that Anna was using the foundation to promote her own political interests and that her socialist ideas were dangerous for the company. Anna, always a woman of principle, was outraged. She refused to be slandered and have her intentions questioned. She decided she would not remain silent. With the support of Sophia and Richard, Anna prepared a detailed presentation showing the social and economic impact of arts education projects in underserved communities. She brought data, testimonials, and success stories. She showed that investing in people was investing in the future. Anna's presentation was a success. With her passion and eloquence, she managed to convince the majority of the board members. Dr. Wallace, cornered, tried to argue, but his words sounded empty against the strength of Anna's arguments. Anna's proposal was approved, and the Sterling Arts Foundation began a new phase, focused on arts education and social inclusion. Daniel, with his artistic experience, and Anna, with her passion for education, formed an unbeatable duo, transforming the foundation into a beacon of hope for young talents. Anna's victory was a milestone for the Sterling family. It showed that the company was not just a financial empire, but also a force for social good. Richard, Sophia, and Eleanor felt immense pride. However, Dr. Wallace did not take his defeat well. A man accustomed to being in control, he felt humiliated. He vowed revenge and began plotting behind the scenes, seeking allies to undermine Anna's and Sophia's influence in the company. Dr. Wallace, with his network of contacts and his experience in manipulation, began to spread rumors about the foundation's management, insinuating that resources were being diverted to Anna's personal projects. He tried to revive the Arthur Brandon scandal, associating it with the foundation's new management. The Sterling family found themselves once again in the midst of a storm. The foundation's reputation, which had been so painstakingly rebuilt, was once again at risk. Sophia, with her sharp mind, saw through Dr. Wallace's plot. She knew he was a dangerous enemy who would not hesitate to use any means to achieve his goals. She and Richard united to protect Anna and the foundation. The fight against Dr. Wallace promised to be even more difficult than the fight against Marcus Vance. He was an internal enemy, someone who knew the company's secrets, the family's weaknesses, and he was determined to destroy everything Sophia and Richard had built. The Sterling family, having just found their peace, was about to be dragged into a new conflict, a conflict that would test the strength of their bonds and the solidity of their values. And Sophia, once again, would find herself at the center of the storm, fighting to protect those she loved from an invisible and dangerous threat. The shadow of a past they thought they had overcome was about to resurface, bringing with it a new threat to their newfound peace. The presence of Anna, with her passion for social justice, would begin to bother some members of the company's board who saw her ideas as a threat to profits. And Sophia, once again, would find herself at the center of a new conflict, a conflict that would put the Sterling family's values and the strength of their love to the test. The defeat in the boardroom was a harsh blow for Dr. Wallace, but he was not a man to accept defeat. His revenge, meticulously planned, began to unfold behind the scenes like an invisible web seeking to ensnare the Sterling family. He knew that a direct attack would be ineffective. His strategy would be to undermine trust, sow discord, and finally topple Richard and Sophia from their pedestal. The first signs of Dr. Wallace's plot emerged as small leaks of distorted information to the press. Anonymous articles on gossip blogs and in society columns began to question the management of the Sterling Arts Foundation, insinuating that the social projects were just a front for embezzlement and that Anna, with her inexperience, was being manipulated. Sophia and Richard, seasoned by past battles, recognized the modus operandi. "It's Wallace," Richard snarled, crumpling a newspaper that bore a slanderous headline. "He's trying to destabilize us." Anna, though more resilient after her trials, felt the weight of the accusations. Her passion for social justice was genuine, and seeing her work distorted and attacked hurt her deeply. Daniel, by her side, was her greatest defender, using his art to express the truth and beauty of the Foundation's projects. The situation escalated when Dr. Wallace, using his influence and old contacts, managed to get an external audit requested for the Sterling Arts Foundation. The audit, though legal, was an intimidation tactic designed to consume time and resources and to find any small flaw that could be exploited. Sophia, with her analytical mind, dove into the Foundation's books. She knew the management was transparent, but she also knew that Dr. Wallace was capable of planting false evidence or distorting facts to create a narrative of corruption. While Sophia and Richard were busy defending the Foundation, Dr. Wallace launched his most personal attack. He began spreading rumors about Sophia's past, resurrecting the story of the jilting and insinuating that she was an opportunist who had married Richard for money and status. He even tried to revive the story of Isabella, suggesting that Richard still harbored feelings for his ex-fiancée. The press, always hungry for a good drama, began to explore these rumors. Sophia, who had overcome the humiliation of the past, felt the pain resurface. The headlines were cruel, the comments malicious. Richard, furious, wanted to confront Dr. Wallace directly, but Sophia stopped him. "No, Richard, that's exactly what he wants. He wants to see us react with anger, with desperation. We need to be smarter." Sophia, with Richard's support, decided to use the media itself to unmask Dr. Wallace. She granted an exclusive interview to a renowned journalist known for her integrity and investigative reporting. In the interview, Sophia didn't dodge a single question. She spoke openly about her past, about the humiliation of being left at the altar, about how Richard had saved her. She spoke about the love that united them, the strength of their family, and the challenges they had overcome together. She also exposed Dr. Wallace's plot, showing the evidence of his manipulation, his personal attacks, and his attempt to destabilize the Foundation. She defended Anna, Daniel, and Eleanor, showing the truth behind the social projects and the integrity of the Foundation's management. Sophia's interview was a turning point. Her honesty, her courage, and her eloquence won over public opinion. People identified with her story of overcoming adversity, with her fight for justice. Sophia's image, once tarnished by rumors, emerged stronger and more respected. Dr. Wallace, who had hoped to destroy Sophia's reputation, saw his plan backfire. The journalist, with her in-depth investigation, discovered that Dr. Wallace had his own skeletons in the closet, involving unethical practices and embezzlement in other companies. The revelation of Dr. Wallace's misdeeds was a shock to the Sterling board. He, who had positioned himself as the guardian of morality, was exposed as a hypocrite. The pressure from shareholders and the public was overwhelming. Dr. Wallace was forced to resign from the Sterling board, and his reputation was destroyed. Sophia and Richard's victory was complete. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, emerged stronger and more united. The Sterling Arts Foundation, its reputation restored, continued to thrive under the leadership of Anna and Daniel, expanding its social projects and bringing art and education to underserved communities. Richard and Sophia, with their unwavering love, became an example of strength, resilience, and integrity. They had faced the past, envy, and malice, and had come out stronger. Life, like a good soap opera, always has one last twist. Sophia and Richard's happiness was complete, but fate, in its unpredictability, was about to present a new challenge. A challenge that would come from an unexpected place, and that would test the strength of their love in a way they could never have imagined. The shadow of a past they thought they had overcome was about to resurface, bringing with it a new threat to their newfound peace. The presence of Anna, with her passion for social justice, would begin to bother some members of the company's board, who saw her ideas as a threat to profits. And Sophia, once again, would find herself at the center of a new conflict, a conflict that would put the Sterling family's values and the strength of their love to the test. The fall of Dr. Wallace brought a period of relative peace to the Sterling family. The Sterling Arts Foundation flourished under the inspiring leadership of Anna and Daniel, expanding its projects and touching the lives of countless people. Richard and Sophia, more united than ever, enjoyed the happiness of their home, with little Gabriel growing up healthy and full of life. The Sterling Corporation, its reputation restored and its image renewed, prospered under Richard's visionary management and Sophia's sharp insight. Eleanor, redeemed and at peace with her past, devoted herself to her grandson and family, finding in her relationships with Anna and Daniel a new form of affection and purpose. The family, once fragmented by secrets and intrigues, had become a safe harbor, an example of overcoming adversity and love. However, life, like a good soap opera, is an endless cycle of challenges and twists. The calm, however desired, never lasted forever. And the next challenge would come from a place Sophia and Richard thought they had left behind: Sophia's past. It all began with a series of anonymous messages sent to Sophia's cell phone. The messages were short, enigmatic, but with a threatening tone. They referred to events from her past, moments Sophia had strived to forget. The past never dies, Sophia. It just waits for the right moment to resurface. You think you can run from who you really are? I know your secrets. Sophia tried to ignore the messages, attributing them to some troublemaker or a remnant of Dr. Wallace's scheme, but the frequency and tone of the messages began to disturb her. She felt a shadow approaching, an invisible threat that made her relive old fears. She finally told Richard about the messages. Concerned, he hired a team of digital security experts to trace their origin. The investigation revealed that the messages were being sent from an anonymous server, with traces that disappeared into a complex network of proxies and VPNs. It was someone with technical knowledge and the intention of not being discovered. The tension escalated when the messages began to get more specific, mentioning intimate details of Sophia's past, things that only a very few people knew. Your darkest secret is about to be revealed. And then, what will Richard think of you? Sophia felt a chill. There was a secret in her past, a secret she had kept under lock and key, a secret she feared could destroy her marriage and her happiness. Before meeting Leo, Sophia had been in a tumultuous relationship with an older man, a charming and manipulative businessman who had involved her in a fraud scheme. Innocent and in love, Sophia had been used as a front, signing documents and participating in transactions without understanding the gravity of her actions. When the fraud was discovered, the businessman fled, leaving Sophia behind at risk of being incriminated. She had managed to prove her innocence, but the experience left her traumatized. She had promised herself she would never tell Richard about this dark episode from her past, fearing he would judge her, that he would see her as a criminal. Now that secret was about to be revealed. And Sophia knew that the person behind the messages was someone who knew this episode inside and out. The digital security team finally made a breakthrough. They traced the origin of the messages to a small law firm specializing in fraud cases in a small town. Richard and Sophia went there. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with a shrewd look, greeted them with an enigmatic smile. "I was expecting you," he said. "My client has a proposal." The lawyer's client was the very businessman who had involved Sophia in the fraud years ago. He had been arrested in another country for similar crimes and was about to be extradited to the United States. He wanted a deal. He wouldn't reveal Sophia's involvement in the scheme in exchange for an exorbitant amount of money. Sophia felt the ground give way beneath her. The nightmare of her past had returned, and now it threatened to destroy everything she had built. Richard, upon hearing the story, was shocked. He looked at Sophia, a mixture of pain and disappointment in his eyes. The secret she had kept, the lie she had told, was a blow to the trust they had built. "Why didn't you tell me, Sophia?" he asked, his voice choked. "I was afraid, Richard," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "Afraid you would judge me, that you would leave me. I was so naive, so in love. I didn't know what I was doing." Richard's pain was palpable, but his love for Sophia was stronger. He knew she had been a victim, that she had made a mistake, but that she had paid for it. "We'll face this together, Sophia," he said, holding her hand. "We'll protect our family." The businessman's blackmail was a real threat. He had proof, documents, witnesses. If Sophia's secret were revealed, the Sterling family's reputation would be tarnished, and Sophia's image, which had been so painstakingly built, would be destroyed. Richard and Sophia found themselves at a new crossroads: pay the blackmail and live with the fear that the secret could be revealed again, or confront the businessman, expose Sophia's past, and risk everything. The decision was difficult, but Sophia knew what needed to be done. She had fought too hard to build her life, to find her love, to have her family. She would not allow a ghost from the past to haunt her forever. "We're not going to pay Richard," she said, her voice firm. "We're going to face him. We're going to tell the truth." Sophia's decision was an act of courage. She was willing to expose her past, to face society's judgment, to risk everything to protect her family and her integrity. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, was about to face its greatest trial, a trial that would define their future and the strength of their bonds, and Sophia once again would find herself at the center of the storm, fighting to protect those she loved from an invisible and dangerous threat. The shadow of a past they thought they had overcome was about to resurface, bringing with it a new threat to their newfound peace. Sophia's decision not to give in to blackmail and to face her past head-on was a turning point. She knew it would be painful, that the truth could shake the image society had of her and the Sterling family, but the lie and the fear of being discovered were burdens too heavy to bear. Richard, though apprehensive, supported her unconditionally, reaffirming his love and trust. "No matter what happens, Sophia," he said, holding her hands, "we will get through this together. Our truth is stronger than any lie." The strategy was clear: get ahead of the blackmailer. Before the businessman could leak a distorted story to the press, Sophia and Richard decided she would tell her version of the facts herself. It would be an act of courage, of vulnerability, but also of controlling the narrative. Sophia granted an exclusive interview, not to a sensationalist tabloid, but to a highly rated television program known for its seriousness and for giving a voice to stories of overcoming adversity. She sat before the cameras with Richard by her side and opened her heart. With a voice choked with emotion but firm, Sophia narrated the details of her past. She spoke of her naivety, her love for an older man who manipulated her and involved her in a fraud scheme. She described the fear, the shame, the struggle to prove her innocence, and the scar that experience left on her soul. She hid nothing. She spoke about the trauma, about the decision to keep the secret from Richard, and about her regret for not having trusted him sooner. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice did not waver. Richard by her side held her hand, transmitting strength and support. He also spoke, reaffirming his love for Sophia, his admiration for her courage, and his conviction that she was a victim, not a criminal. Sophia's interview was a shock to the public. The story, which the blackmailer had hoped to use to destroy her, turned into a testament of overcoming adversity and resilience. People were moved by her vulnerability, by her honesty. Sophia's image, once tarnished by the secret, emerged stronger and more human. The media's reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Reputable outlets praised Sophia's courage, and the blackmailer's story was exposed as a vile extortion attempt. The businessman who had hoped to profit from Sophia's secret saw his plan crumble. The Sterling family, who had prepared for the worst, felt immense relief. Eleanor, Daniel, and Anna expressed their unconditional support for Sophia, showing that love and unity were stronger than any secret from the past. The businessman, cornered and with no more leverage against Sophia, was extradited to the United States and faced justice for his crimes. The blackmail was exposed, and he was convicted. Sophia's victory was complete. She had faced her. Demons exposed her past and come out stronger. The truth, however painful, had set her free. The life of Sophia and Richard, which had been a roller coaster of emotions, finally found its peace. They had overcome every challenge, every adversity, and their love had grown stronger with each trial. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, emerged more united and resilient. The Sterling Arts Foundation, under the leadership of Anna and Daniel, continued to flourish, bringing art and education to underserved communities. Little Gabriel grew up in a home full of love, surrounded by a family that had learned the value of truth, forgiveness, and unity. Sophia, the abandoned bride who found love where she least expected it, had become a strong, courageous, and inspiring woman. She had proven that the past does not define who we are, but rather the choices we make in the present. The story of Sophia and Richard, which began with a scandal and was marked by intrigue, secrets, and twists, reached its climax. They had built an empire of love, respect, and values, an empire that withstood every storm. And so, the narrative of the lives of Sophia and Richard Sterling, a true real-life soap opera, found its happy ending. An ending that was not the end but the beginning of a new journey, of a life full of love, overcome challenges, and a promising future, built on the solid foundation of truth and courage. The Sterling family, now complete and united, looked to the future with hope, knowing that together they could face anything. Sophia and Richard's happy ending, though well-deserved, did not mean the end of the stories that intertwined in the vast tapestry of the Sterling family. Life, after all, is a continuous flow of new beginnings and unexpected challenges. The peace they had won was a solid foundation, but the outside world continued to turn, bringing with it new opportunities and, inevitably, new trials. Years passed. Gabriel, Sophia, and Richard's son grew up to be an intelligent and charismatic young man, with his mother's insight and his father's determination. He was the joy of the house, the bond that united the family even more. The Sterling Arts Foundation, under the visionary management of Anna and Daniel, flourished, expanding to other states and becoming a model of social and cultural inclusion. Eleanor, now a loving grandmother and great-grandmother, enjoyed the tranquility of a full life, surrounded by the affection of her children and grandchildren. Richard and Sophia, together, had transformed Sterling into an even more powerful conglomerate, with a strong social and environmental commitment. They were an example of success in business and in life, a couple who inspired everyone with their story of love and perseverance. However, the calm was to be tested again. Sterling's exponential growth attracted the attention of a group of international investors, led by an enigmatic and ambitious figure, the Russian billionaire Sergei Volkov. Volkov was known for his aggressive acquisitions and for his reputation of leaving no stone unturned to achieve his goals. Volkov's proposal was tempting, a merger that would turn Sterling into a global powerhouse with access to new markets and cutting-edge technologies. But the offer came with a condition. Sterling would have to give up part of its controlling stake, and more importantly, drastically reduce its investments in social projects, which Volkov considered unnecessary and unprofitable. Richard and Sophia found themselves facing a dilemma. The merger represented a giant leap for the company, a dream of expansion they had cherished for years. But Volkov's condition went against all the values they had built, against the legacy of social responsibility that Sterling had embraced. The Sterling family gathered to discuss the proposal. Daniel and Anna, with their passion for social projects, were vehemently against the merger. They argued that Sterling's purpose went beyond profit, that the company had a responsibility to society. Eleanor, with her wisdom, warned of the dangers of allying with a man like Volkov. She saw in him the same unbridled ambition that had characterized some of the family's past enemies. Richard, the strategist, saw the pros and cons. The merger would bring unprecedented power, but at what cost? He knew that the soul of Sterling was at stake. Sophia, with her sharp intuition, felt there was something more behind Volkov's proposal. She was suspicious of his intentions, of his haste to close the deal. She began to investigate Volkov's past, looking for any clue that could reveal his true intentions. Sophia's investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. Volkov had a history of hostile takeovers, of dismantling companies, and of disrespecting agreements. He was a master at manipulating situations, at using his partner's ambition against them. The truth came to light. Volkov didn't want a merger. He wanted an acquisition. His plan was to use Sterling to expand his own businesses, dismantle the foundation, and eventually discard Richard and Sophia. The revelation shocked the Sterling family. They had been targeted by a predator even more cunning than Marcus Vance or Dr. Wallace. Richard, with Sophia's support, decided he would not yield. They would not sell the soul of Sterling, nor betray the values they had built. They would fight. The battle against Sergei Volkov promised to be the toughest of all. He was a powerful adversary, with unlimited resources and a global network of contacts. But Richard and Sophia had something Volkov didn't have: the strength of a united family, the loyalty of their employees, and the conviction that they were fighting for the right thing. Sterling prepared for war. Richard, with his legal and financial team, devised a defense strategy. Sophia, with her intelligence and communication skills, prepared public opinion, exposing Volkov's predatory tactics and defending Sterling's values. Anna and Daniel, with the support of the Foundation, mobilized the artistic and social community, showing the positive impact of Sterling and the threat that Volkov posed to culture and social inclusion. The fight against Volkov was long and exhausting, fought in the courts, in the media, and behind the scenes of the corporate world. There were moments of despair, of uncertainty, but the Sterling family stood united, a beacon of resistance against greed and unbridled ambition. In the end, the truth prevailed. Volkov's predatory tactics were exposed, and his reputation was tarnished. He was forced to retreat, and Sterling emerged victorious, stronger and more united than ever. The Sterling family, which had been tested by so many challenges, emerged as a symbol of integrity and resilience. Richard and Sophia, with their unwavering love, proved that it is possible to build a successful empire without giving up human values. The story of Sophia and Richard, which began with a scandal and was marked by intrigue, secrets, and twists, found its true happy ending. An ending that was not the end, but the beginning of a new era for the Sterling family. An era of prosperity, social responsibility, and a legacy that would be passed down for generations. Life, after all, is a continuous journey, and the Sterling family was ready for whatever came next. Together, always together. The victory against Sergei Volkov was a landmark in the history of the Sterling family. It not only solidified the company's position in the global market, but also reaffirmed its values and commitment to social responsibility. Richard and Sophia, once again, proved that integrity and family unity were the greatest strengths against any adversity. Sterling was not just a financial empire, it was a legacy of principles. The years that followed were of prosperity and peace. Gabriel grew up, becoming a brilliant young man with a generous heart and a sharp mind. He inherited Sophia's passion for justice and Richard's strategic vision, showing a genuine interest in both the family, business, and the social projects of the Sterling Arts Foundation. Anna and Daniel continued to expand the foundation, which became an international model for social inclusion through art. Eleanor, with the serenity of age, watched with pride the family she had built, a family that overcame its own secrets and prejudices to become a beacon of hope. Sophia and Richard's life had reached a level of fulfillment. They traveled, enjoyed each other's company and their families, and continued to innovate in business, always with a keen eye on society's needs. Their love, tested and proven by countless trials, was the rock upon which everything was built. However, life, in its infinite capacity to surprise, had one last, unexpected twist in store. A twist that would not come from an external enemy, nor from a secret of the past, but from a new generation, from a love that would blossom amidst traditions and expectations. Gabriel, upon turning 20-something, decided it was time to follow his own path. He had graduated with honors from the best universities and, instead of immediately taking a prominent position at Stirling, expressed a desire to work at the Stirling Arts Foundation alongside his Aunt Anna and uncle, Daniel. Richard and Sophia, though surprised, supported their son's decision. They knew Gabriel needed to find his own purpose, and the foundation was a place where he could make a difference. It was at the foundation that Gabriel met Clara. Clara was a talented young artist, with a free spirit and a passion for art that rivaled Daniel's. She came from a humble family, but her intelligence and determination had earned her a scholarship at the foundation. Gabriel and Clara fell in love. It was a pure, intense love that blossomed amidst social projects and art exhibitions. They shared the same ideals, the same worldview, the same passion for making a difference. The news of Gabriel's relationship with Clara was received with joy by the Stirling family. Sophia and Richard saw in Clara the same strength and authenticity that Sophia possessed. Eleanor, Anna, and Daniel welcomed Clara with affection, seeing in her a soulmate for Gabriel. However, Gabriel and Clara's love story would not be without its challenges. Clara's family, though happy for their daughter, felt intimidated by the world of the Stirlings. They feared Clara would be swallowed by a universe so different from hers that she would lose her essence. And as in any good soap opera, an unexpected obstacle arose. An old boyfriend of Clara's, an ambitious and jealous young man named Lucas, reappeared in her life. Lucas, who never accepted the end of their relationship, began to harass Clara, trying to undermine her relationship with Gabriel and her position at the foundation. Lucas, with his envy and thirst for revenge, began to spread rumors about Clara, insinuating that she was using Gabriel to climb the social ladder, that she was not worthy of the Stirling name. He tried to discredit her work at the foundation, claiming she was inexperienced and was diverting resources for her own projects. The Stirling family, which had faced so many external enemies, now found themselves facing an internal one, someone who threatened Gabriel's happiness and the foundation's reputation. Gabriel, with the wisdom he inherited from his parents, did not let himself be shaken. He trusted Clara and knew that Lucas's accusations were baseless. He and Clara united to face the challenge, showing that their love was stronger than any intrigue. Sophia and Richard, with their experience in crisis management, supported Gabriel and Clara. They knew that the best way to combat malice was with truth and transparency. The Stirling Arts Foundation, with the family's support, organized a public event to present Clara's projects and to show the transparency of its management. The press, which had been manipulated by Lucas, was invited to investigate, to see Clara's work with their own eyes. The truth prevailed. Clara's work at the foundation was praised, and Lucas's accusations were exposed as pure envy and malice. Lucas, ashamed and with no more leverage against Clara, was forced to retreat. Gabriel and Clara's love story, which had been tested by an unexpected enemy, emerged stronger and more mature. They had proven that true love is capable of overcoming any obstacle, any intrigue. And so the saga of the Stirling family continued, a saga of love, of overcoming adversity, of challenges and victories. With each new generation, the family reinvented itself, grew stronger, adapted to new times, but always maintained the values that Sophia and Richard had built: truth, courage, unity, and a commitment to a better world. Life, after all, is an endless soap opera, with new characters, new dramas, and new twists. But the Stirling family, with its legacy of love and resilience, was ready for whatever came next, together, always together, writing new chapters of a story that would never have a final period. The victory over Lucas solidified Gabriel and Clara's love, proving that the new generation of Stirlings was just as prepared as the previous one to face adversity. They married in a simple but meaningful ceremony at the Stirling Arts Foundation, surrounded by friends, family, and the children who benefited from the projects. It was a day of celebration, a testament to the power of love and resilience. The years went by and the Sterling family continued to grow and prosper. Gabriel and Clara had 2 children who inherited their parents' and grandparents' passion for art and social commitment. Sterling became a global conglomerate, but never lost its essence, its focus on people and a more just future. Richard and Sophia, now with grey hair but the same sparkle in their eyes, watched with pride the legacy they had built. They had transformed a story of pain and humiliation into a tale of love, perseverance, and purpose. Their lives were proof that true love, courage, and integrity can overcome any obstacle. On a golden afternoon, as the sun set over the Sterling mansion, Richard and Sophia sat in the garden hand in hand watching their grandchildren play. The gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and the sound of children's laughter. "Who would have thought, Sophia," Richard whispered, squeezing her hand, "that the abandoned bride and the skeptical businessman would build all this?" Sophia smiled, her eyes welling up. "We built it, Richard. Together. With love, with truth, and with a lot of fighting." He looked at her, and in his eyes Sophia saw the same passion, the same admiration as the day they met. "I love you, Sophia. More than words can say." "I love you too, Richard," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. "And I'm grateful for every challenge, for every tear, for every smile. It all brought us here." At that moment, one of their grandchildren ran up to them, handing Sophia a freshly picked flower. She smelled it, and a smile of pure happiness lit up her face. Life, in its fullness, unfolded before them, a continuous cycle of love, learning, and renewal. Richard and Sophia hugged, feeling the peace that only the certainty of a life well lived can bring. The past, with its shadows and ghosts, was finally in its proper place, as part of a story that shaped them but did not define them. The future, with its promises and challenges, was open, waiting to be written by the new generations. And so, the saga of the Sterling family, a true real-life soap opera, found its conclusion not with an abrupt end, but with the promise of an eternal legacy, of a love that transcends time and adversity. End of story. Wow! What an emotional journey, right? We followed Sophia, the jilted bride, who rose from the ashes to find true love with Richard. We saw the fight against Isabella's envy, the discovery of his brother Daniel, Eleanor's redemption, and the search for his sister Anna. We faced the corruption of Arthur Brandon, the vengeance of Dr. Wallace, and the unbridled ambition of Sergei Volkov. And finally, we celebrated the love of Gabriel and Clara, who proved that the new generation of Sterlings is ready to continue this legacy of passion and justice. If you were moved, cheered, and inspired by every twist and turn of this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new content. Hit that like button if you loved this narrative and comment with your favorite moment or the character that resonated with you the most. And of course, share this story with your friends and family so more people can be captivated by the saga of the Sterling family. Oh, and don't stop here. To your left, you'll find a playlist packed with other amazing stories that will grab your attention from start to finish. Come venture into new worlds and get emotional with unforgettable characters.